she attracts the wild boars to a location where she hides bombs underground to kill them at once. As you can see the huge explosion here. This is Gonza and Eboshi who are looking down at the scene of bombing. See how we can't see their eyes? And this is their tactic to bomb the wild boars by attracting them to a mined field. When they do that, they deploy their, their subordinates, like the cowherds near there. As they bomb the boars who charge toward the minefield, those people also receive the explosion, and the huge dead bodies of the boars fall on top of them, which pretty much kill all of them. Later, there's a very tragic scene where Ashitaka finds one of the survivors covering his face, crying, while the dead bodies in heaps surround him. Just like that, Eboshi does not hesitate to sacrifice her subordinates as a bait as one of her options. That's how she can stay cool and objective when something like that actually happens. So, we can say that there are two sides to who she is. She can definitely be a good leader who is extremely intelligent and kind, but at the same time she can be a cold leader who doesn't mind sacrificing her own people to fulfill her purposes. She's portrayed as a person who obtains these two sides. I think Eboshi has a model. I think it's this person, Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong was a leader with enormous charisma and thorough rationality, who relentlessly pursued cultural revolution that was filled with destructions and slaughters, but at the same time made endless efforts to improve the lives of the farmers. And the reason why he's the model of Eboshi is because Mao was someone who declared, in 15 years, China will overtake the United Kingdom, who was the world leader in steel industry at the time. To do that, Mao tried to make an iron town or steel mill in every Chinese village and teach the farmers steel making. By doing so, Mao attempted to improve the productivity of iron in China drastically. Well, although the end result was a huge failure. I think Miyazaki took such history of Mao into account and portrayed the community of Iron Town in Princess Mononoke as a kind of communist utopia. Miyazaki spent all his youth, from his late teenage to early 30s, longing for communism. Of course, the brutality and the problems of Mao Zedong and the organization and guidance department of the Communist Party of China have been fully revealed by now. However, Miyazaki, as a so-called old leftist, thinks that he's not a superficial man who would easily turn his back on something he has once believed and go, well, communism was a mistake, the Communist Party of China was wrong. He rather thinks that if communism was a mistake, it's more important that he inspects why did such mistake happen inside of me, and he would cling on to the issue until the inspection ends. So, my theory is that the image of Eboshi is inspired by Mao Zedong in his youth, but she was depicted as a woman of great beauty. So again, Eboshi is sold by a slave dealer, becomes a wife of a Wako pirate, but later kills the leader, steals an advanced technology from Ming and tries to make an independent country in Japan. In other words, she's a revolutionist as well as a terrorist. For her, both kings and gods are nothing but obstacles. Mao Zedong himself said religion is an opium, and denied religion or even the existence of a god. Likewise to Eboshi, the forest spirit is nothing more than a giant creature, and even though the imperial family claims we come of a family of the gods, they are mere politicians. I believe Eboshi thinks we need neither for my ideal country. In my country, everyone is equal, and our lives will be put together rationally. Not only that, she's armed with a thoroughly logical mind. I'm not gonna deal with such superstitious nonsense. She's also literally armed, so she's a real terrorist. And I see this theory time to time on the internet. I also question, isn't Eboshi and son mother and daughter? Well, people who write something similar on the internet all say, although there's no evidence, and I don't have any proof either, because Miyazaki himself has never mentioned any of that. In fact, I thought maybe Suzuki-san has said something carelessly since he's chit-chatty. So I looked up most of his remarks, but I couldn't find a single word of evidence. However, although there's no evidence, there are things that are unnatural. If you see the settings of San's upbringing, it only says she was abandoned as a scapegoat by a human who has offended the forest. That's all there is for the official setting. As I said a little while ago, even a side character like Eboshi has a setting like she's sold to a foreign country and so on, or Jigo and so many other characters have tons of settings, but somehow San is the only one who has just one line description about who she is. It's too insufficient and unnatural. Moreover, there are many recollection scenes during the movie, but there is none that depicts San as a baby. So I can't help but to think that there must be a reason that only San has such brief setting. And if San is Eboshi's daughter, if Princess Mononoke was her daughter, then many things can be explained. For example, if Eboshi has a child with the Wako pirate, she must not love the child very much, considering the fact that she becomes his wife and eventually kills him. Well, you might say, no, she's a woman. She must love her own child, but no, Eboshi's not a regular woman. She's a female version of Mao Zedong. If we see her as Mao Zedong, we can also think that she feels a bit differently than other ordinary women. And of course, there is no child in Irontown. As I said before, I think this is because of the strict birth control. If Eboshi made all villagers know that their leader abandoned or lost her own precious child, it's easier for me to understand and everything makes sense clearly why everyone in the village is convinced by the rule that they can't make a child. It also gets easier to understand that Moro, the foster parent, and Eboshi, the true parent, hate each other so strongly if we think Eboshi and San are a mother-daughter relationship. I mean, in the first half, Moro is shot and injured by Eboshi, but until then, there should be no reason for Moro to have a strong personal grudge against Eboshi. However, both of them have that much grudge against each other by name. Moro is saying that the fight is not over until I bite Eboshi to death. So no matter how you look at it, it's a personal grudge against Eboshi. As for Eboshi, it appears as a precise symbol of her own guilt that a Japanese wolf called Moro is raising her own child that she abandoned. Every time she sees her daughter, who was raised by a Japanese dog, no matter how much she thought that San is no longer her child, she can't help feeling guilty. I've always wondered if the red pattern on San's face in a tattoo, who put it in for what purpose? One interpretation is to think when San grew up, she put it in by herself as a sign of determination that she was no longer a human being, so would never shed tears again. I also kind of think, actually, it may have been put in by whoever abandoned her to indicate that she was no longer a human. Anyway, the emotions between Moro and Eboshi can be explained well. What should I say? If we focus on the mother and daughter relationship between San and Eboshi.